Jake Morrison stood at the front window of his ship, looking out at empty space. Where his home planet Earth should have been, there was nothing but rocks and dust floating in the darkness. His hands pressed against the cold metal as he stared at the place where billions of people once lived and laughed and dreamed. "The readings are clear, Jake," said Lisa Bennett from behind him. She was the smartest person on the ship, maybe the smartest person in their entire fleet. Her voice was quiet and sad. "This is definitely where Earth used to be. The star maps match perfectly." Jake turned around slowly. Lisa was looking at her computer screen, but he could see tears in her eyes. Even though they had known this day would come, seeing the empty space where their ancestors' home once stood hit them harder than expected. 500,000 years, Jake said quietly. "That's how long it's been since they killed our world." The ship's communication system made a soft beeping sound. Captain Amy Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers. "All ship commanders report to the Vengeance immediately. We have work to do." Jake walked through the long hallways of his ship, past rooms full of people who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Everyone was quiet. Everyone knew what they were looking at outside the windows. The empty space where Earth died was a reminder of why they were here. The shuttle ride to the Vengeance took 20 minutes. Jake looked around at the other ship, commanders sitting with him. There was Ryan Kelly, who was good at sneaking around and gathering information. There was Megan Torres, who could fix anything and build weapons that no one had ever seen before. There was Frank Adams, who studied alien creatures and knew more about other species than anyone else in the fleet. All of them had grown up hearing the same stories. All of them had spent their lives getting ready for this day. The meeting room on the Vengeance was huge. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood at the front, and behind her was a giant screen showing pictures and numbers. Amy was tall and strong, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had been chosen to lead because she was smart and brave, but also because she never forgot why they were here. "Today we stand where our ancestors once lived," Amy said. Her voice carried through the room easily. "Today we see what the Galactic Council did to our people. They didn't just kill the humans who lived on Earth. They killed our entire solar system." The screen behind her showed old pictures of Earth, green forest, blue oceans, white clouds, cities full of people, children playing in parks. It was beautiful and peaceful, nothing like the empty space outside their ships. "Dr. Watson, please tell everyone what you found in the old records," Amy said. Carl Watson was an old man with white hair and a kind face. He had spent his whole life reading old books and files, learning about the past. He stood up slowly and walked to the front of the room. "The Galactic Council has been ruling the galaxy for over 1,000,000 years, Carl said. "They control 12,000 different species across all the known worlds. When humans first started traveling to other planets, the Council watched us. They saw how fast we learned new things. They saw how quickly we adapted to new places and new situations." Carl touched a button, and the screen showed pictures of alien creatures. Strange beings with too many arms or eyes like jewels or skin that looked like metal. "The Council was afraid of us," Carl continued. "Not because we were violent, though some of us were. They were afraid because we changed so quickly. Other species in the galaxy had stayed the same for thousands of years. But humans kept growing, kept learning, kept becoming something new." Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had heard this story before, but hearing it again while looking at the empty space where Earth used to be made it feel fresh and terrible. "So, they decided to kill us all," Carl said simply. "They used their technology to make our sun explode. They thought it would be clean and simple. No one would know they had committed murder. Earth and everyone on it would just disappear. But some of us escaped," Amy said, taking over the story. "A few thousand humans got away in ships, our ancestors. They scattered across the galaxy, hiding and running and trying to survive." Amy touched another button. The screen now showed pictures of their ships, sleek and powerful and unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "For 500,000 years we have been preparing," Amy said. "We have been learning and growing and becoming stronger. We have..." Develop technologies that the Council never imagined. We have evolved beyond what even our ancestors thought possible. She paused and looked around the room. Every person there was listening carefully. The Council thinks we are dead. They believe they succeeded in wiping out humanity 500,000 years ago. They have grown comfortable in their power. They have become lazy and weak. Megan Torres raised her hand. What about the other species? The ones the Council controls? Frank Adams answered before Amy could speak. I've been studying the alien specimens we've captured over the years. The Council has been changing them, using genetic modification to make them more obedient, more dependent, less able to think for themselves. That's right, Amy said. The Council doesn't just rule through fear. They rule by making other species unable to resist. They take away their natural abilities, their strength, their intelligence. They turn proud warrior races into servants. Jake stood up. So what's our plan? Amy smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a very long time for revenge. We're going to do what the Council fears most, she said. We're going to wake up the galaxy. We're going to show every species what they could be if they were free. We're going to remind them what they were before the Council broke them. And then, Ryan Kelly asked, then we're going to make the Council pay for what they did. To Earth, Amy said, but not by destroying them quickly. We're going to take apart their empire piece by piece. We're going to free every world they control. We're going to show the galaxy that the Council's time is over. Lisa Bennett looked up from her computer. I've been analyzing the Council's current technology based on what we've observed. They haven't advanced much in the last 100,000 years. They've been so focused on controlling others that they've stopped innovating themselves. Perfect, Amy said. That gives us every advantage we need. Jake looked around the room one more time. These people had all grown up together, trained together, prepared together. They were more than just soldiers or explorers. They were the children of Earth carrying the dreams and hopes of a dead world. How long do we have? Jake asked. The Council's nearest patrol ships will detect our presence within 48 hours, Ryan said. After that, they'll know we're here, Amy nodded. Then we have 48 hours to get ready. Everyone return to your ships and prepare your crews. Check your weapons, your systems, everything. When the Council realizes that humanity has returned, they're going to throw everything they have at us. Are we ready for that? Megan asked. Amy looked out the window at the empty space where Earth used to be. We've been ready for 500,000 years, she said quietly. It's time to go home. The meeting ended, and everyone returned to their ships. Jake stood on his bridge again, looking out at the debris field that was once his ancestors' home. But now he didn't feel just sadness, he felt something else. Something that had been building in humanity for 500,000 years. He felt ready for war. 3 weeks had passed since the human fleet left the empty space where Earth once stood. Now they were moving through the outer edges of Council territory, and everything was different here. Stars were brighter, space was busier, and everywhere. They looked. There were signs of alien civilization. Ryan Kelly sat in his small scout ship, watching a Council patrol vessel through his sensors. The alien ship was huge compared to his, with strange curves and bright lights along its sides. But it moved slowly, like it had nowhere important to go. This is too easy, Ryan said into his communication device. These Council ships are flying in straight lines. They're not even scanning for threats. It's like they've forgotten how to fight. Back on the main fleet, Megan Torres was working in her laboratory. Around her, dozens of humans were building weapons and devices that had never existed before. But these weren't just tools of war. They were something much more interesting. Show me the neural interface again, Megan said to her assistant, Danny. Cooper. Danny held up a small device that looked like a metal butterfly. When we attach this to an alien's head, it doesn't control their mind. It just removes the barriers that the Council put there. It lets them think clearly for the first time in thousands of years, Megan smiled. Perfect. How many do we have ready? About 1,000 so far. But we can make more quickly if we need them. On another ship, Frank Adams was studying a council alien they had captured during a small battle. The creature looked like a giant insect, but it was clearly intelligent. Its eyes were large and sad, and it kept making soft sounds that might have been singing. "What's your name?" Frank asked gently. The alien made more sounds, then seemed to understand that Frank couldn't understand its language. It pointed to itself and made a specific noise. "Clicks." "Hello, Clicks," Frank said. "I'm Frank. We're not going to hurt you." Clicks tilted its head like a confused dog. Frank could see that the creature was trying to think, but something was making it difficult. There was a small device attached to the back of Clicks's head. Almost hidden under its shell, Frank carefully removed the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Clicks's eyes became bright and alert. It looked around the room with surprise, as if seeing everything clearly for the first time. "Where am I?" Clicks said in perfect English. "How do I know your language? What happened to my mind?" Frank felt sick. "The council put that device on you. It was making you slow and confused? How long have you been wearing it?" Clicks thought for a moment. "I don't remember not wearing it. My whole life, I think. My whole species wears them. We thought they were just decorations." Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was leading a small group of ships toward a council-controlled planet called Zarian. According to their information, Zarian was home to a species called the Daleks who had once been famous warriors. Now they were used as simple laborers by the council. "Are you sure about this plan?" asked his second-in-command, Betty Phillips. "We're not going to attack the planet," Jake said. "We're going to land and talk to the Daleks. Show them what they used to be, and if the council tries to stop us." Jake looked at the weapons display on his control panel. Human technology had advanced far beyond anything the council possessed. "Then we'll show them what we've become." The landing on Zarian was easier than expected. The council had only a small garrison there, and they seemed more confused than hostile when human ships appeared in their sky. The Daleks working in the field stopped what they were doing and stared up at the strange new vessels. Jake and his team stepped out of their ship onto the purple grass of Zarian. The air smelled like flowers and metal. In the distance, they could see a city with tall buildings that looked like they were made of crystal. A group of Daleks approached them slowly. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that changed colors as they moved. But their movements were slow, and their eyes were dull. "Greetings, strangers," said the lead Dalek in a flat voice. "Are you here to give us new work orders?" Jake felt the same sickness that Frank had experienced. These creatures were clearly intelligent, but something was wrong with them. They moved and spoke like robots. "We're here to show you something," Jake said. He pulled out one of Megan's neural devices. "May I attach this to your head? It won't hurt, I promise." The Dalek seemed confused by the question. "Why would you ask permission?" "You're in charge. We obey." "No," Jake said firmly. "You don't have to obey anyone. You can choose." He gently placed the device on the Dalek's head. There was a small flash of light, then the device fell to the ground. The Dalek stumbled backward, its eyes suddenly bright and alert. What did you do to me?" the Dalek said. But now its voice was full of emotion. "I can think. I can feel." "What happened to me? What happened to my people?" Other Daleks gathered around, curious. Jake used more devices on them, and each time the same thing happened. Confusion, then awareness, then anger. "How long have we been like this?" asked a female Dalek whose skin was now flashing bright red with fury. "How long have we been slaves?" "In our own minds? According to our records, about 50,000 years, Jake said sadly. The Daleks looked at each other with growing rage. One of them pointed toward the Crystal City. "The council administrators live there? They watch us work? They make sure we never rest." "Not anymore," Jake said. "We're going to free your entire planet, but we need your help." Within hours, the word had spread across Zarian. Humans were freeing Daleks from their mental prisons, and the Daleks were remembering who they used to be. They had been warriors, artists, scientists, philosophers. The council had turned them into simple workers, but their true nature was still there, just hidden. The council garrison tried to stop the liberation, but they were no match for angry Daleks who could finally think clearly. The battle was over in minutes. "This is just the beginning," Jake told the gathered Daleks. "There are thousands of worlds like yours. Millions of people living as slaves without even knowing it." An old Dalek warrior, his scars now visible without the mental fog, stepped forward. "Then we will help you free them. This is a debt we can never repay, but we will try." On the main fleet, Captain Amy Rodriguez was receiving reports from all over the sector. Ryan Kelly had identified dozens of weakly defended worlds. Megan Torres had figured out how to mass-produce the liberation devices. Frank Adams had learned how to communicate with 17 different alien species, but the most important news came from their artificial intelligence partner, Prime. "Captain," Prime's voice came through the ship's speakers, "I have been analyzing Council communication networks." "They know we are here? How much do they know?" Amy asked. "They know that someone is liberating their controlled worlds. They know their slaves are becoming free. But they do not yet know that humans are responsible. They think it might be a rebellion from one of the conquered species," Amy smiled. "How long before they figure out the truth? Perhaps 2 weeks. Maybe less. Then we need to move faster. Send orders to all ships. We're going to liberate 50 worlds in the next 10 days. Across the fleet, humans prepared for the largest liberation operation in galactic history. They had learned something important from Zarian. Most alien species didn't want to be slaves. They had just forgotten how to be free, but the humans remembered. They had spent 500,000 years learning how to be free in the darkness. Between stars? Now they were going to teach the galaxy. The Council's greatest fear was about to come true. The galaxy was about to wake up. High Counselor Zextara stood in the center of the Great Council chamber on Nexus Prime. The room was enormous, with walls that seemed to stretch up forever. Around him, floating in the air, were holographic images of other council members from across the galaxy. All of them looked worried. Zextara was old, even by his species' standards. His people could live for millions of years, and he had been alive when the Council first decided to destroy Earth. His skin was like blue metal, and his eyes glowed with a cold silver light. "Explain to me again what is happening," Zextara sighed. His voice was deep and echoed through the chamber. Counselor Mokara, whose species looked like giant spiders made of crystal, spoke first. 37 worlds have gone silent in the past 2 weeks. When we send ships to investigate, we find the same thing every time. The controlled populations have removed their neural regulators. They are thinking freely, and they are angry," added Counselor Yithbal, who resembled a floating jellyfish made of purple light. "Very angry. They remember what we did to them." Zextara felt something he had not experienced in thousands of years. Fear. "How is this possible?" "The neural regulators cannot be removed without special equipment. None of the controlled species have access to such technology." "That's what we thought," said another voice. Counselor Velkith appeared as a hologram near the center of the room. Unlike the others, Velkith looked exactly like a human, except for his completely black eyes. "But someone is helping them, someone with advanced technology." Zextara turned to look at Velkith. "You were present when we dealt with the human problem 500,000 years ago. Could they have survived somehow?" Velkith was quiet for a long moment. "It should be impossible. We destroyed their entire solar system, but the liberation technology being used ... it's beyond anything we've seen before. And it's specifically designed to undo our neural control systems." At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed red, and a voice spoke from the communication system. "Alert, fleet engagement at Kepler Station, unknown vessels attacking our forces." Zextara commanded the central display to show what was happening at Kepler Station. The screen lit up with images of space battle. But what he saw made his blood run cold. The attacking ships were sleek and fast, unlike anything in the Council's database. They moved through space like living creatures, dodging weapons fire that should have been impossible to avoid. And their weapons were tearing through Council defenses like the defenses were made of paper. What are those ships? Melkara asked, before anyone could answer. The display showed one of the unknown ships destroying a council battleship with a single shot. The battleship simply disappeared, turned into light and vapor. This is Admiral Susan Clark of the Earth. Fleet? Came a voice through the communication system. Council forces at Kepler Station, you have 30 seconds to surrender before we destroy you all. The council chamber fell completely silent. Earth fleet. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Impossible, whispered Yithbal. Earth is gone. We saw it die. On the display, they watched as the council forces at Kepler Station tried to fight. It was hopeless. The human ships were too fast, too smart, too advanced. In less than 10 minutes, the entire council fleet was either destroyed or captured, but the humans didn't kill the alien crews. Instead, they freed them from their neural regulators, just like they had done on the liberated worlds. Zexthara stood frozen as he watched freed council soldiers join the human fleet. Species that had served the council for thousands of years were now fighting against it. They're not just back, Velka said quietly. They're nothing like what they used to be. 500,000 years of exile has changed them into something we never imagined. Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Vengeance, Captain Amy Rodriguez was meeting with her ship commanders after the victory at Kepler Station. The mood was good, but not celebratory. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. The council knows we exist now, Amy said. They'll be preparing their full military response. Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair. How strong are they? Really? Lisa Bennett pulled up data on her computer. Based on what we captured at Kepler Station, the Council has about 50,000 warships spread across the galaxy. But most of them are old designs. They haven't improved their technology in over 100,000 years. Why not? Asked Betty Phillips. Frank Adams answered. Because they didn't need to. When you control everyone's minds, you don't need better weapons. You just need to maintain control. Ryan Kelly had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. I've been analyzing the Council's communication networks. They're scared. Really scared. They're calling emergency meetings and moving fleets toward the core worlds. Amy nodded. Good. Fear makes people make mistakes. Pete Johnson, who commanded the destroyer Earth's Fury, raised his hand. I intercepted some interesting council communications during the battle. They mentioned something called the Final Protocol. The room became very quiet. Amy looked at Pete with concern. What kind of Final Protocol? I'm not sure. But from what I could understand, it's something they've been saving in case their control over the galaxy was ever threatened. Something they've never used before. Lisa Bennett looked worried. We should assume it's a weapon. Probably something designed to destroy entire star systems like what they used on Earth. Let them try, said Megan Torres. We're not the same. Species they destroyed 500,000 years ago. We've evolved beyond their understanding. Amy stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see hundreds of human ships and thousands of liberated alien vessels. The fleet was growing every day as more species joined their cause. There's something else we need to discuss, Amy said. We've been freeing individual worlds, but that's not enough. We need to strike at the heart of their power. You mean Nexus Prime, Jake said. Exactly. As long as the Council leadership survives, they'll keep trying to rebuild their empire. We need to end this permanently. Frank Adams looked concerned. Nexus Prime is the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. They have orbital platforms, energy shields, and probably weapons we don't even know about. And they'll be expecting. U.S., added Ryan Kelly. They know we're coming, Amy smiled. That's exactly what I'm counting on. While they're preparing to defend Nexus Prime, we're going to do something they won't expect. What's that? Asked Lisa Bennett. We're going to liberate every single world in the galaxy at the same time. The room erupted in surprised voices. Amy raised her hand for quiet. Think about it, she said. The Council's power comes from controlling other species. But what happens when every controlled species is freed at the same moment? What happens when 12,000 different worlds all rebel against the Council at the same time? Megan Torres grinned. Chaos, complete chaos. Not chaos, Amy corrected. Revolution. The biggest revolution in galactic history. Jake Morrison leaned back in his chair. How do we coordinate something like that? We're talking about 12,000 worlds spread across the entire galaxy. We use their own communication network against them, Ryan Kelly said, understanding the plan. We hack into the Council's systems and broadcast the liberation frequency to every controlled world simultaneously. Amy nodded. Exactly, but we'll need a distraction. Something big enough to draw their attention away from their communication centers. A direct assault on Nexus Prime, Pete Johnson said. Right. While they're focused on defending their capital, we'll free their entire empire out from under them. Lisa Bennett was already working on her computer. I'm running calculations on the energy requirements. It's possible, but we'll need every ship in the fleet to provide power for the broadcast. And if it doesn't work? Asked Frank Adams. Amy looked out at the stars. Then we fight them ship by ship, world by world, until either they're gone or we are. But I think it will work. The Council has one weakness they've never been able to fix. What's that? Jake asked. They forgot that every species in the galaxy, deep down, wants to be free. The next 3 months changed everything. Word spread across the galaxy faster than the Council could stop it. Humans were real, they were back, and they were freeing every world they touched. Captain Nancy Wright stood on the bridge of her ship, the Freedom's Call, as it approached the world of Korvath. This planet was home to a species that had once been the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Now they were used as simple guards and soldiers by the Council. Are you sure about this alliance? Asked her second-in-command, Tony Stevens. The Korvath used to eat other species for breakfast, Nancy smiled. That was before the Council put control devices in their heads. Let's see what they're really like when they can think for themselves. The landing on Korvath was different from the other worlds. The Korvath didn't wait for the humans to find them. As soon as Nancy's ships entered the atmosphere, hundreds of massive alien warriors came running toward them. Nancy stepped out of her ship carefully. The Korvath were huge, twice as tall as humans, with thick armor-like skin and claws that could cut through metal. But something was strange about them. They were moving slowly and their eyes looked confused. Why do we want to hurt you? Asked the lead Korvath warrior. His voice was deep and rough, but he sounded puzzled. We always want to hurt strangers. But looking at you, we feel different, Nancy understood immediately. It's because we don't have neural regulators. Your programming doesn't work on us. Here, let me help you. She placed one of Megan's liberation devices on the warrior's head. The change was immediate and dramatic. The Korvath's eyes became bright and fierce, and he let out a roar that shook the ground. I remember, he shouted. I remember who I am. I am Gregthur, son of Mekthur, leader of the Thunder Clan. He looked around at his fellow warriors who were still confused and slow. What have they done to us? Nancy explained about the neural regulators while her team freed more Korvath warriors. Each time a device was removed, the same thing happened. The warriors remembered their true selves, their families, their culture. How long? Gregthur asked when he learned the truth. 80,000 years, Nancy said gently. Gregthur was quiet for a long moment. Then he threw back his head and roared again. 80,000 years of slavery. The Council will pay for this crime. Within days, the entire Korvath species had joined the Human Alliance. They brought not just their strength, but their knowledge of Council military tactics. They also brought their ships, which were old but powerful. Meanwhile, on a world called Jektai Prime, Ryan Kelly was meeting with a very different kind of alien. The Jektai looked like living crystals, and they communicated by changing colors and making musical sounds. Your species is beautiful, Ryan said to the Jektai leader, whose name translated to something like Harmony of Light. We were more beautiful before, Harmony of Light replied, her crystal body flashing sad blue colors. The Council made us dull. They said bright colors were dangerous, that music was a waste of time. They made us gray and silent. Ryan had never seen anything so tragic. The Jektai were clearly meant to be creatures of art and beauty, but the Council had turned them into boring workers. What were you like before? Ryan asked. Harmony of Light's body began to glow with warm golden light. We were singers of the cosmos. Our music could heal broken minds, inspire courage, even help plants grow faster. We were teachers and artists, not just builders of council machines. After the liberation devices were used, the Jektai transformation was amazing. Their bodies blazed with every color imaginable, and their music filled the air with sounds so beautiful that Ryan almost cried. But there was sadness too, as they realized how much they had lost. We will sing the songs of war now, Harmony of Light told Ryan, her body flashing angry reds and oranges. We will sing the council to its doom. Back on the main fleet, Dr. Kevin Baker was working with Prime, the artificial intelligence, on their most important project. They had figured out how to turn the liberation process into a signal that could be broadcast across the galaxy. The neural regulators all work on the same basic principle, Kevin explained to Captain Amy Rodriguez. They suppress certain brain functions while enhancing others. If we can create a signal that reverses this process, we can free everyone at once. Prime's voice came through the ship's speakers. The mathematics are complex, but achievable. However, we will need enormous amounts of power to broadcast the signal to every world simultaneously. Amy looked at the tactical display showing their growing fleet. They now had over 10,000 ships from dozens of different species. Will this be enough? If every ship in the fleet links their power systems together, yes, Prime replied. But the fleet will be vulnerable during the broadcast. All ships will need to remain stationary and connected. How long will the broadcast take? Amy asked. Approximately 47 minutes to reach every world in the galaxy, Kevin said. Amy nodded. Then we'll need a distraction that lasts at least an hour. Something big enough to keep the Council's entire military focused somewhere else. At that moment, Grace Murphy entered the meeting room. Grace commanded the largest group of human warships, and she had been planning the assault on Nexus Prime for weeks. I have good news and bad news, Grace said. The good news is that we can definitely break through the Council's defenses around Nexus Prime. Our technology is just too advanced for them. And the bad news, Amy asked? They have something called the Star Killer. It's the same weapon they used to destroy Earth's sun, and they're preparing to use it. The room became very quiet. Lisa Bennett looked up from her computer. If they have stellar manipulation technology, they could destroy any star system in the galaxy, including systems with our liberated allies. Frank. Adams was studying captured Council data on his tablet. According to this, the Star Killer takes 72 hours to charge up and target a star. And it can only be fired from Nexus Prime. Amy felt a cold fear in her stomach. How long before it's ready? Based on the energy readings Ryan's scouts have detected, maybe 4 days, Grace said. Amy stood up and walked to the window. Outside, alien ships from dozens of species were flying alongside human vessels. All of them were counting on the humans to free their galaxy. We're out of time, Amy said. We need to attack now, before they can use the Star Killer. But the Liberation broadcast isn't ready, Kevin protested. We need at least another week to prepare. Then we'll have to do both at the same time, Amy decided. Grace, how many ships do you need for the assault on Nexus Prime? 3,000 should be enough to break their defenses and keep them busy. Take them. Kevin, how many ships do you need for the broadcast? All the rest, about 7,000. Looked around the room at her friends and allies. Then that's our plan. Grace attacks Nexus Prime and destroys the Star Killer while Kevin broadcasts the liberation signal to every world in the galaxy. And if something goes wrong? Grace asked. Amy was quiet for a moment. Then we trust that the galaxy wants to be free badly enough to fight for itself. 2 days later, the human fleet split into 2 groups. Grace Murphy led 3,000 ships toward Nexus Prime, while the rest of the fleet moved to a safe distance and began preparing for the greatest broadcast in galactic history on Nexus. Prime, High Counselor Zextara watched the approaching human fleet with a mixture of fear and anger. They're actually attacking our capital directly. The arrogance is incredible. Sir, said a council technician, the Starkiller will be ready to fire in 18 hours. Good, Zexthara replied. Let them come. When they see their precious liberated worlds burning, they'll understand the price of defying the council. But as Grace Murphy's ships approached Nexus Prime, something else was happening across the galaxy. 7,000 ships were linking their power systems together, preparing to send a signal that would wake up every enslaved mind in the galaxy. The final battle was about to begin. The battle for Nexus Prime began at dawn on the planet's surface. Grace Murphy watched from her command ship as 3,000 human and allied vessels dropped out of hyperspace around the Council's capital world. The planet was beautiful, with golden cities and silver towers that reached toward the stars. But it was also surrounded by the most powerful defenses in the galaxy. Incoming missiles, reported her weapons officer Danny Williams. Thousands of them. Let them come, Grace said calmly. Show them what we've learned. The human ships didn't try to dodge the missiles. Instead, they seemed to shift slightly, and the missiles passed right through them like they were made of light. The Council defenders watched in horror as their most powerful weapons had no effect at all. Phase technology, Grace explained to her crew. We learned how to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Their weapons can't touch us unless we want them to. The human fleet began its attack on the orbital defense platforms. Each platform was the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But the human ships moved like dancers, sliding between dimensions, appearing and disappearing at will on the planet's surface. High Counselor Zexthara watched the battle with growing panic. How are they doing this? This technology should be impossible. Sir, called a technician, the Starkiller is almost ready. 12 more hours and we can destroy any system they came from. Good, Zexthara said. Charge it faster. We need that weapon now. But far away from the battle, something even more important was happening. 7,000 ships hung in empty space, their power systems linked together in a massive network. On the flagship, Kevin Baker and Prime were preparing to send a signal that would travel to every world in the galaxy. Are you ready? Captain Amy Rodriguez asked. As ready as we can be, Kevin replied. Once we start the broadcast, we won't be able to stop it, and we'll be completely vulnerable until it's finished. Amy looked at the display showing the battle at Nexus Prime. Grace's ships were winning, but the Council still had tricks left to play. Begin the broadcast, Amy ordered all. Across the linked fleet, power systems hummed to life. The ships began to glow as enormous amounts of energy flowed between them. At the center of the formation, a beam of pure light shot out into space, heading toward a network of communication satellites that would carry the signal to every corner of the galaxy. The signal was invisible, but its effects were immediate. On thousands of worlds, aliens who had lived their entire lives as slaves suddenly felt something change in their minds. Neural regulators that had controlled their thoughts for millions of years simply stopped working. On the industrial world of Keth Prime, a worker named Vexla suddenly dropped the tool he was holding. For the first time in his life, he could think clearly. He looked around at his fellow workers and saw that they were having the same experience. Why are we building weapons for the Council? Vexla asked. Why are we helping them oppress other species? Within minutes, the entire factory had stopped working. The workers were remembering who they used to be before the Council enslaved them on the farming world of Theta 7. A female alien named Zilra looked up at the sky and began to cry. She could remember her children now, children the Council had taken away from her decades ago. She could remember her mate, her family, her dreams. We are free, she whispered. Then she shouted it, We are free! The same scene was playing out on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for so long they had forgotten their own names were suddenly remembering everything. And they were angry. Back at Nexus Prime, the battle was reaching its climax. Grace Murphy's ships had destroyed most of the orbital defenses, and now they were moving toward the planet's surface. But the Council had one last surprise. Energy readings are off the charts, reported Danny Williams. Something big is powering up on the planet. Grace saw it on her display, a massive weapon built into the planet's crust, the Star Killer. But instead of pointing at a distant star, it was pointing at her fleet. "All ships, emergency jump," Grace ordered. "Get out of here now." But it was too late. The Star Killer fired, sending a beam of energy that could destroy suns directly at the human fleet. The beam hit Grace's command ship and passed right through it. Without causing any damage, Grace stared at her instruments in amazement. "That's impossible. That weapon should have vaporized us." Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his nearby ship. "Grace, look at your crew." Grace looked around her bridge and gasped. Her officers were glowing with a soft golden light. Their eyes had changed, becoming deeper and more aware than any human eyes she had ever seen. "What's happening to us?" Danny Williams asked. But his voice sounded different, wiser somehow. Prime's voice came through the ship's speakers, but now it sounded more human than ever before. "The Star Killer doesn't just destroy, it also reveals. The Council built it to eliminate any species that evolve beyond their control. But when used on a species that has already evolved far enough, it simply completes the process." Grace felt changes happening in her own mind. She could suddenly see patterns in the universe that she had never noticed before. She could understand how space and time worked together, how energy and matter were connected. "We're becoming something new," she said with wonder, on the planet below. High Counselor Zexthara watched in terror as the human fleet, instead of being destroyed, began to glow even brighter. The ships started changing shape, becoming more elegant and beautiful. "Sir," called a technician, "we're receiving reports from all over the galaxy. The controlled populations are rebelling. Every world, every species, all at the same time." Zexthara fell into his chair. "It's over. Everything we built, everything we controlled, it's all gone." At that moment, Jake Morrison appeared in the council chamber. Not as a hologram, but physically present, even though his ship was still in orbit. He looked like a human, but there was something different about him. His eyes held the wisdom of stars, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "High Counselor Zexthara," Jake said calmly. "Your time is over. How are you here?" Zexthara asked. "How did you get past our defenses?" "I walked through them," Jake said simply. Distance doesn't mean much when you understand how the universe really works. Zexthara tried to activate a weapon, but it wouldn't respond to his commands. "What do you want? Revenge? To destroy us like we destroyed Earth?" Jake shook his head. "We don't want revenge. We want something much more important." "What? We want?" "The galaxy to grow, to learn, to become what it was always meant to be." Across the galaxy, the effects of the Liberation broadcast were spreading. On world after world, freed aliens were overthrowing their council oppressors. But they weren't destroying everything. Instead, they were building something new. On Korvath, Gregthor was leading his warriors not in battle, but in the construction of schools and hospitals. "We were warriors," he told his people, "but now we will be teachers." On Jektai Prime, Harmony of Light was organizing the greatest concert in galactic history, with musicians from 100 different worlds. "We will sing the galaxy into a new age," she declared. Captain Amy Rodriguez received reports from across the human fleet. The Liberation broadcast had worked perfectly. 12,000 worlds were free, and their people were already working together to build a better galaxy. "What happens now?" Amy asked Jake when he returned to the fleet. Jake looked out at the stars, and Amy could see that he was different now. Not just human anymore, but something more. Something that could guide and teach without controlling. "Now we do what humans have always done best," Jake said. "We help others become the best versions of themselves." 6 months later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Council's empire was gone, replaced by a voluntary alliance of free species. Each world governed itself, but they worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Humans didn't rule this new galaxy. Instead, they traveled from world to world, teaching and learning, helping other species discover their full potential. They have become what they were always meant to be, not conquerors but gardeners of possibility on a small world near where Earth used to be. Lisa Bennett established the Archive of Memory. It was a place where the stories of every species were preserved, including the hard lessons of the Council's rule. We must never forget, Lisa told her students, who came from dozens of different species. Power corrupts when it's held by those who fear change. True strength comes from helping others grow. The galaxy had learned that evolution couldn't be stopped, only guided. And humanity, children of a dead world, had become the teachers of infinite possibility. The age of control was over. The age of growth had begun.